歡迎各位嚟到香港科技大學藝術中心同埋楊森會合辦嘅音樂欣賞小錦囊古典音樂欣賞課程。我係你哋嘅主持李國旗。今日我哋嚟到課程嘅最後一輯巴洛克啦。巴洛克呢個名稱嘅來源呢，有好多唔同嘅講法嘅。咁我就覺得呢，有一個比較特別啲嘅講法呢，想介紹俾大家。有學者呢就話巴洛克呢個名詞呢，係源自葡萄牙文嘅 Baroque 咧就代表咗一粒粗糙同埋不規則嘅珍珠。我哋知道啦，珍珠一向都係以表面光滑係叫珍貴噶嘛，值錢噶嘛。咁一粒又粗糙又不規則嘅珍珠，自然係唔受歡迎咯。咁相信人一定唔會用呢個貶詞嚟形容自己身處嗰個時代嘅。咁所以咧，其實用呢個字咧，自然係下一代嗰啲擁有一啲唔同嘅審美眼光嘅人去用嘅呢個字。當佢哋回望翻17至到18世紀中期嘅藝術嘅時候咧，佢哋就覺得哇，嗰陣時啲藝術好誇張、好失實。咁所以佢哋用咗巴洛克呢個名詞嚟形容當時嘅音樂啊或者藝術咁嘅。咁當然啦，巴洛克呢個名詞仲係有好多其他嘅解釋或者來源嘅，大家可以慢慢查閱嘅。
If you still remember, I like to use two terms to describe each period. For the Baroque period, they are dynamic and contrast. Let's look at this church in Rome. The facade looks a bit different from most churches we have seen, right? The irregularly corrugated surface provides a very strong light and dark contrast. And if we look more closely, the wavy design actually makes the surface seem flowing, adding a dynamic feel to the whole facade. And here are two paintings on the theme of crucifixion, which can illustrate the ideas of dynamic and contrast. The painting on the left by Rubens, here the master captured the moment when the huge hooks were erecting the crucifix bearing Jesus, showing a dynamic scene of the moment. In the painting on the right, on the other hand, Rembrandt employed a strong contrast of light and dark to depict the dramatic moment when the dead body of Jesus was descended. As I've mentioned before, Baroque music and the development of modern music are closely related. From the birth of the opera to instrumental genres like concerto and symphony, and the presence of the major and minor scales and harmony, these all became important influence to the later development of the musical stage. Personally, I believe that modern music actually stemmed from the Baroque era. Let's focus on one of the genres, opera. In ancient Greece, the play was a religious rite, as well as a popular activity for the whole population. During the reign of the Roman Empire, the art form greatly declined and was no longer supported by the European culture after the fall of the Roman Empire. During the late Renaissance, in around the 70s or 80s of the 16th century, a group of musicians, poets, and thinkers gathered at the home of the powerful banker Bardi and discussed the possibility of bringing back the ancient Greek play. According to their studies, the scripts of the play might not be all recited, and some of those should be sung. They also realized that the polyphony in the Renaissance were not appropriate if they had to interpret the text clearly. To solve the problem, they created a new form of composition, monody, in which there is a single melody accompanied by simple harmony. As a result, the archetype of opera was born, and then, to make the plot progress faster, they have created the recitative, in which the singer uses a single tone to recite the plot. The earlier operas are usually small in scale, with Greek mythology as the plot. However, when the genre traveled to other European countries like France and the UK, new styles and features emerged. For example, in France, the development of all music would be geared towards how to please the Sun King, Louis XIV, and had to be solemn and flamboyant, just like the emperor himself. Since the opera is a combination of stage design, costume, lighting, dance, literature, and music, I strongly recommend you to watch, but not just to listen to operas. Because of the development of the opera, a peculiar phenomenon arose in the Baroque. Castration was practiced on certain teenage boys so that their voices would remain high-pitched. When they grew up, their stronger lung capacity would mean that they could perform more powerfully with more varied emotions and melodies of much wider ranges. In those days, these castrati were very popular and could enjoy great fame and wealth, an ancient version of celebrity singers. Although they were gradually replaced by sopranos and coloratura sopranos, as the church still preferred male singers, the last castrato survived until the beginning of the 20th century. As a result, we could have some live recordings of such singers. However, as the technology a century ago was still primitive, we could not clearly discern the unique tone quality of these singers. The last famous castrato in Baroque was Farinelli. Legend has it that he was so charming that no matter male or female, the royalty or the clergy, all his admirers could not help but fall for him. There's actually a movie from 1994 that depicts the life of Farinelli. In the movie, the voice of the castrato was actually created by mixing the voices of a countertenor and a soprano, and should not be considered the real voice of castrati. Anyway, let's watch an episode of the movie. The development of operas took different paths in different countries, but there was also a time when it hit the rocks. Our beloved Handel was actually already developing his opera in England at the beginning of the 18th century. Everything went well initially, and he had created 36 operas in 3 decades. However, when it came to the mid-18th century, there was a sudden change in the trend, and the audience were tired of the roles of myths, heroes, and nobles in the operas, which they thought were so remote from the reality. Handel apparently lost everything. After quite a long while, Handel spotted the potential of oratorio and started to compose oratorio. The genre turned out to be well received by the British audience, and Handel became popular again. So what are oratorios? Actually, oratorios are religious operas first appearing in the 17th century without stage effects or grandiose costumes. Other than the role of the narrator, Handel also employed chorus singing and his fantastic word painting techniques to add spirits to his oratorios. In other words, Handel and oratorio created a second life for each other. To choose the best example of a Handel oratorio, the best choice is certainly his Messiah. Legend has it that Handel worked 24 days and nights without sleeping and finished the oratorio. When his servant brought him his meal, he was seen in tears, murmuring that he saw God coming in from there facing the window. Now, let us listen to one of the best episodes, For Unto Us a Child is Born, and find out how the composer started with polyphony and eventually led the choir to sing in unison the most important sentence in the song, Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty God. Next, we'll travel back to the realm of instrumental music. The development of Baroque instrumental music can said to have excelled that of any other previous periods, as lots of various instrumental genres first appeared in this period, including concerto, suite, sonata, and overture, to name but a few. Among these genres, the concerto is actually the best representative for using contrast in Baroque style. In the violin or piano concertos we hear these days, we usually see a soloist playing against a whole orchestra with dozens of players. One of the most famous solo concertos should be the Four Seasons violin concertos by Vivaldi. Every movement actually comes with a verse describing the scene, which makes it much easier to appreciate. In the first movement of Spring, there are birds singing along with the breeze, thunder, and lightning. Now let us listen to this. In the Baroque period, there were also the forms of concerto grosso, which involved a group of several soloists and an orchestra, and also the ripiano concerto, in which there were no soloists but showcased the contrast of different sections. In this way, the composer can make excellent use of contrasts in dynamics and tone colors. First, let us listen to Brandenburg Concerto No. 2 by J.S. Bach and appreciate the composer's effort in contrasting the solo group, comprising a violin, an oboe, a recorder, and a trumpet, and the orchestra. If you want to listen to a ripiano concerto, I'll suggest the Brandenburg Concerto No. 3. In this concerto, Bach had the orchestra divided into 3 sessions, each chasing and cooperating with the others. Please pay special attention here to the non-stop notes, which vividly demonstrate the Baroque style of dynamics. Baroque is such a prosperous period that we can't easily cover in a short period of time, so please accept my apology if there are some points that I've missed. The last part of this episode will be about the fugue, a genre that could never be left out when we talk about the music of the Baroque. When we discuss the fugue, we can never not mention the master Johann Sebastian Bach, the father of music. Well, never and not? Yes, because he is the one and only and the best of the best. And because of this, we could not but admire the master for bringing the fugue to its best and blame him for burying the genre, as no composer was confident that it would be possible to compose something that can be compared with Bach's. So the easiest way out would be not to try the genre. Then what is a fugue? It is actually a genre of polyphony, with one line chasing the other, as we have mentioned in previous episodes. However, the way Bach dealt with his melodies was unique, especially when he cut up the melodies into chunks and wrote imitations. That is when his mastery is at its best. Now let us listen to one of his fugues.
聽完4輯嘅音樂欣賞小錦囊之後呢，希望大家對呢個屬於較早嘅音樂時期裏邊嘅音樂特色呢有啲體會啊。其實欣賞音樂呢，除咗朝呢個風格呢個方面着手之外呢，仲有好多個唔同嘅方向呢，令到我哋更加能夠了解樂曲或者係作曲家想要表達或者表現嘅思想或者事物嘅。例如我哋可以集中只係研究樂曲裏邊嘅旋律。睇睇呢個旋律每次喺同一個作品裏邊出現嘅時候呢，出現咗咩變化？嗱，呢個可能已經係作曲家想要帶出音樂裏邊其中一個重要嘅意念嘞噃。總之一句講晒呢，想了解音樂一定要多聽，只要多聽，你先至可以將一啲抽象嘅旋律記起佢，然之後再喺腦裏邊分析嘅。希望以後仲有機會為大家帶嚟更加多嘅欣賞方法呢。再見。